This meeting is being recorded.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Employability Skills Series, where I am all over the place with something's going on with my mouse here. Where we explore the top skills employers are looking for in candidates. I am your host, Megan Morrow, and today I have Greg Schell and Edgar Brown as my guest. Greg Schell is the Regional Vice President of Auto Owners, and Greg Brown is one of the managers at Auto Owners. And today we are going to be discussing the importance of pointing out mistakes without demoralizing in the workplace. Greg Schell is the Regional Vice President of Auto Owners Insurance Company, the Lakeland region. He attended Winter Haven High School and received his bachelor's degree in 1983 from Florida Southern College with a major in business administration. After a couple of internships with insurance companies, Greg started his insurance career with Allstate Insurance as a claim representative in Fort Lauderdale. He began his career with Auto Owners in November of 1984 as a branch claim rep in Lakeland, and during his 39 plus years with Auto Owners, he's held positions in claims, marketing, and management. He's been fortunate to work in Florida, Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, then back to Florida as the Regional Vice President in 2004. Greg holds his CPCU and AIC designations, and he is also a member of the Lakeland Rotary Club and board member for the local CPCU chapter, as well as president of board for Pace Center for Girls Polk, a local nonprofit organization. He's married to Cheryl for 35 years, and they have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Hobbies include just about anything outdoors, including fishing, hunting, scuba diving, hiking, and attending grandkids' activities. And fun fact, hiked the Grand Canyon from rim to rim, which is 23 miles in one day, which I think I would feel like I was going to die as well, with 2 of his daughters. We also have Edgar with us. He is a CPU and the insurance underwriting manager in Florida for Auto Owners. He's been with Auto Owners for 13 years and held positions in underwriting, marketing, and leadership. He graduated from USF with a bachelor's in marketing and management. Edgar's also married, 4 kids and 2 cats. I don't know about the cats, but and grew up in Florida in Fort Meade. So thank you, Greg and Edgar, and welcome. Thank you for being here with us today.
Well, we appreciate the invitation. It's always good to network with Florida Southern students, and that's one of my honors, is to be able to recruit from our alma mater. And so again, thanks for the opportunity. Edgar?
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate the invite. This is always a lot of fun, and we hope that it's very informative and helpful for each of you today.
Excellent. Well, our students are chiming in. They typically just listen in, so it'll just be basically the 3 of us kind of talking. But students, as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to come off mute, or you can put anything in the chat pod. But I'm going to turn this over to Greg. They've prepared a presentation for you guys to talk about the importance of being able to point out mistakes without demoralizing. So what does that mean?
All right. That is a really good question, Megan. We're going to share our screen here. And thank you, D'Angelo, for helping out. Let's see here. Make sure we get this going. Are we on? Megan, can you see our screen?
I can.
You can. Very good.
Yes.
All right. Make sure I got this right. Excellent topic, by the way. When Megan gave us this topic, we're pretty excited about it, because this is something we deal with in the business world on a daily basis, not only a daily basis, but throughout the day. I mean, people make mistakes. We're all human. So the question is, how do you deal with those mistakes without really kind of alienating your friends and your coworkers and making them very resentful? We certainly don't want to do that. So we're going to kind of give you some tips on how to do that and do it the right way, at least the way we do it. So let's go to our first screen. See if I can advance this. Oh, here we go. All right. Megan, did that get the facts? Do you see that?
I see. Get the facts. Yeah.
Okay, make sure we're advancing correctly. Now, Edgar, I want you to jump in on this, because we deal with this all the time. We'll get a situation where we think a mistake has been made, or maybe even a complaint. And boy, I tell you what, when you're a new like a manager, or it's so easy just to jump conclusions, believe everything you hear, and then go, running down the road to try to fix the problem. The problem is there's always what we call it, two sides to every story, right? I mean, get the facts before you go too far into whatever the issue might be. So, Edgar, what do you want? I know you deal with this on a daily basis. Go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll speak at it from, I have a team of about 40 associates that report to me. And when we talk about getting the facts, one of the things that comes to mind for me is, again, not making assumptions about situations before you do get the facts. And what I found in my career in leadership is if you do that, you can often break down trust with people. So if you go into that conversation and you need to provide feedback, but you've made a lot of assumptions before getting the facts, you can demoralize that person, and often it weakens the trust that you build with them.
Absolutely. So after you get the facts, now you know what the mistake is or what the issue is. Then you got to determine how bad is it. I mean, is this something that needs immediate attention? We don't believe in procrastination, and never let it wait too long. I always say when you see a mistake, try to take care of it right away. But first of all, find out how bad it is. And the last thing you want to do is go, well, I really don't want to approach that person. That's a difficult conversation. I think I'll just let it go. Well, I always say it's kind of like a piece of meat out in the sun. It only gets worse over time. So you want to take care of whatever that mistake is and take care of it relatively quickly. Okay. Also, you want to approach whoever made the mistake, and you want to basically get their side of the story. Edgar, I know that we just talked about that, but again, I'm sure they have a reason why they did what they did, why the mistake was made. It could have been just a pure mistake, but we want to find out and make sure that we have their version of the story before we go running down the road of trying to fix it. Anything you want to add to that, Edgar?
Yeah, sure. And I remember during COVID, we went home as a company and there was a lot of changes for us, and our team was working remote. All of a sudden, it wasn't expected, so it was new to a lot of us. And during that time period, one of the big things we do is we do have a lot of incoming phone calls. And I had a particular associate that was on the reports that we have was not answering the phone. And I was like, okay, this is a problem. We need to address it. It was a big concern. And I called the associate. I did not step into it accusing them. I'm like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about the situation? The reports I'm seeing show that you're not answering your calls. And to be honest with you, I had already in my head, I kind of made the assumption like they're not doing what they're supposed to. We're at home and they're not answering the phone. And the reality is she said that she had a poor internet connection and her computer wasn't working well, so she had given her cell phone out to use. And we talked through that. But again, had I jumped into that conversation just like, oh, you're not answering your phone, you're not doing what you're supposed to, it would have, again, demoralized, where there really was another side of the story. There was another truth that was there. And I'm glad that I gave her the opportunity to explain her side in that situation.
Yeah. It's funny, we all make mistakes. And if I make a mistake, I certainly hope whoever catches that mistake, first of all, thank you for catching the mistake, but bring it to my attention. And who knows, maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe I did the right thing, or at least I perceived to do the right thing. So again, we just want to make sure we have everybody's version of what happened so we can go down the correct path of solving that. Okay, a couple of do's and don'ts, especially in the business world or in any world for that matter. Always, we call it criticize in private. You never want to embarrass anybody. You never want to just call somebody out.
So,
Maybe
no,
you're
it's just
in a meeting.
Megan's,
Hey, Jovan.
my bad.
Okay. You
Sorry,
never
Greg.
want to embarrass anybody. I'm sorry. Make sure you never embarrass anybody. You don't want to be like in a group setting. Somebody has said something maybe isn't exactly correct. You don't want to just call them out. It's very embarrassing to do that. So if you do, you got to be very, very tactful how you do that. But again, we try to always criticize in private, and then we always say praise in public. So, in management, we have people do wonderful things. And when they do, we want to recognize them for that. It kind of builds their self-esteem. It builds them up. It gives them self-confidence, and it gives them the desire to go out and make more good decisions. So again, always criticize in private and praise in public. Edgar?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that, when you are building trust with your team or your coworkers, one of the things I share with my supervisors that work with me is look for opportunities to praise, because it's very easy to always pick out the negative or the thing that someone's doing wrong. So if you've built up that trust and you do take the time to also praise the good in public, like Greg said, and when you do have to come to someone with some constructive feedback, they're more willing to take that because they know you're looking at both sides. You're not just criticizing them all the time. You also recognize when they do well.
Exactly. So basically, it gets back to what we call the golden rule. Treat people how you want to be treated. So what it does, it shows respect for that individual, shows trust. So you didn't just kind of throw under the bus, so to speak. You came to them and gave them an opportunity to try to correct it. Also, you showed empathy, because nobody wants to look bad. So the fact that you went to that individual in private, you pointed out the mistake, and let's work together on trying to fix this thing. Do you have any ideas? We'll talk about that in a little bit. It just basically builds camaraderie, builds trust, builds respect, and it really will help the team versus alienating that individual, embarrassing that individual, and then they don't want to work with you anymore. So you got to be very, very careful about throwing anybody under the bus. Use as much tact as you possibly can. So once you have identified the mistake, you brought it to the person's attention, you folks agree that it is a mistake. So how do you fix it? Edgar, what do you think?
It depends on the situation, but a lot of times it's best. I like to ask open-ended questions of people. So if there is a mistake, asking things like, hey, how do you think you could do this differently, is a good way of getting an open-ended conversation going, so you can get to consensus versus myself just telling someone, hey, this is how and when and how you have to do it. But sometimes you do have to do that. Setting clear expectations is really important. At the end of the day, what consensus you come to is fine, but as a leader or manager or coworker, just make sure you're setting a clear expectation, whatever that might be for the solution.
Yep. And another thing I always try to do, I always try to let them try to come up with, they're the one who made the mistake. Try to point out the mistake, you agree on the mistake, let them try to come up with a solution. But Edgar, in management, sometimes we always have to bring our ideas to the table. Sometimes we have to kind of ask leading questions to kind of lead them down a path. Things like, well, have you considered this? Do you think this would be a better approach to try to fix this solution? So you're trying to lead them down a path to make the right decision so we can decide and agree on how to fix the problem in the first place. So once we find out a mistake and once we kind of agree on, okay, how are we going to fix this problem? Now we need to communicate to the group. If there is a group, there may not be a group, it might be just an individual. You agree on what needs to be done, and then you can move forward. But if there is a more of like a classroom or a group or a work setting, that we need to identify that there was a mistake. This is what we're going to do to try to fix it and try to move forward. So I always am of the opinion also, the more minds, the better. So me and that individual maybe worked on a solution. And if we go to the group, identify the problem, explain what we thought would be, what the problem is, how we think we're going to fix the problem. But then I would ask the group, does anybody have any better ideas? Who knows? There's a lot of good minds out there. There might be a better solution to the problem. Edgar, any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's really good. One of the things that, in management, sometimes we're removed from certain situations. So if you are in a situation where you're in a leadership position, getting the feedback from people who are actually doing the work or on the floor, we say, can give you some better ideas and better context. If you're in a one-on-one situation where you're giving a coworker feedback, that can be a little bit more difficult. But again, if you can get a group together, oftentimes you do find a better solution when you're getting kind of 360 feedback from everyone.
I agree. Now, another thing that I've learned is sometimes we don't always have the best ideas. So keep an open mind, because there's always a better idea out there. So somebody may come up with an idea, and the last thing you want to do is say, okay, my idea is better than your idea. You want to keep an open mind. Somebody may come up with a better idea. So that's the end of the game, is what's the right way to fix the problem. All right, the next we want to talk a little bit about is finalize the solution. Once you have you've identified the problem, you met with the individual, you recognize there is a problem, you gave them a chance to come up with some ideas, you helped them out a little bit, you've announced it to the group. Now you come up with how are we going to fix the problem? So finalize the solution. So once the solution has been finalized, well, now you got to fix it. So I call it closing the sale. It's amazing how many people come up, figure out what the problem is, and then they never fix it. So Edgar, let's talk a little bit about that. This is kind of one of the most important things to me is the follow-up. What are we going to do to fix the problem? So, and then again, I put on here again, do not procrastinate. It doesn't get better in time. If we can identify the problem in a timely manner and we can fix it, let's go ahead and get it done. Edgar, I know you have, you deal with this stuff each and every day. Do you got any real life examples of that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it from the perspective of the person you provided the feedback to. So for each of you in the class today, if you've been provided with feedback, one of the things I always like to say is you do need clear expectations of what it looks like to move forward. So I think if you're not getting those expectations set, ask for them to be set. If you're the leader, then make sure you're taking that into consideration. And it could be a short-term fix or a long-term fix, but you want to lay out the path and what that looks like. And you want to have details and expectations. So if it's something that needs to be implemented over the next 2 weeks, put that date down and put what the expectations are up until that point. And I know we're going to get into monitoring the results, but that would be the next step. But you do want to have those expectations set, so when you do go to monitoring the result, you have something to look back on. So if you're on the end where you're giving the feedback, make sure you're setting clear expectations for the person of what that looks like going forward with a time frame. If you're the person getting the feedback, make sure you are asking for those expectations. That way you can do what's asked of you and not have questions about the expectations going forward.
Yeah, Edgar, that's really good advice. I love the setting a time frame, because everybody's on the same page. Everybody has a time frame to get it fixed, and they know there's going to be follow-up. So, what gets measured gets taken care of. So I love the idea of setting some kind of time frame to fix the problem. So now we got to monitor it, and that's what Edgar is talking about. So we need to, again, establish the time frame, monitor it, and basically make sure it gets fixed. So the last thing you want to do is talk about it. Everybody does all the hard work and then never follow up and it never got resolved. So whatever the problem was, by following up in a timely fashion, making sure that the actual fix gets resolved, and then you can move on to the next one. Edgar, anything else?
I'll just add to that. You want to know as a student or a worker or an employee, you want to know what the end result is supposed to be. Make sure you understand when you are monitoring, make sure you have a clear understanding of what the result you're trying to get to is. Because it can be demoralizing, and the follow through is important. If I have a discussion with an associate and I've provided them feedback and we put a plan together, and then as a leader, I do not follow up on that, that can be demoralizing too, because it's like, oh, you got on to me for this, you talked to me about this, but there's no follow through. You didn't help me see it through. So as a leader, you got to follow through to make sure it happens, set that expectation again, and make sure you're getting to the end result. As an employee or a coworker, make sure, again, you understand what the end result is that we're trying to get to.
And as a follow-up to that, the old communicate, and then communicate, and then communicate some more. I can't emphasize that enough. Communication, and really lack of communication is the cause of most problems. So you have to communicate, and sometimes over-communicate to make sure it gets handled properly. So I guess I want to leave our discussion today that mistakes are going to happen. Mistakes are a natural part of what goes on in life. Whenever you're dealing with humans, we're always going to make mistakes. So treat a mistake as a learning opportunity. So, treat it as we all learn from our mistakes, and Lord knows we all make them. And this is another big thing. Take ownership. My goodness, don't deflect. If I make a mistake and take ownership. Don't say, oh, that wasn't my fault. Oh, that was somebody else's fault. If you made a mistake, take ownership, stand up for it. Find a fix. Let's get it fixed. And then let's move on. So don't dwell on the problem. It got resolved. It got fixed. Move on. And so that's kind of a little bit of our advice for today is hopefully a little bit what we talked about this morning may help you a little bit, not only for simple mistakes, but also the bigger mistakes. Edgar?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is if you are in a leadership position or even as a coworker, it's fair to explain to the person where you're coming from and why you're providing that feedback. And I'll give you a real quick example. I had a annual review with an associate not too long ago, and we had to provide them with some feedback that was very uncomfortable. When you are giving feedback to someone, it's not always easy. We're not gonna leave this presentation today saying, hey, this is the easiest thing you're gonna do. But you have to do it with tact. And in that discussion with this associate, I had to give them some feedback that, honestly had to do with their personality, which is really tough to tell someone. And before I sat down with them, I said, hey, this is the place I'm coming from on this. I have your best interest in mind. For you to continue to move forward in your career, I feel like we're at a point that I'll be doing you a disservice if I don't share this feedback with you. I'm just here to help you. You're coming from a place that you want to help someone, or you're truly interested in their success. That's going to be received much better. And, honestly, in that moment, the associate didn't want to hear what I had to say. But this morning, right before this meeting, I actually had a one-on-one with them, and we're about 2 months away from that original discussion. And she's like, thank you so much for being honest with me and sharing with me. And so I just want to leave that, with you. If you're being honest with someone and you're coming from a good place, you truly care, they're going to appreciate that at the end of the day. The conversation may not initially be the easiest thing to do, but at the end of the day, you're doing the right thing by being honest and having a true discussion with someone.
Edgar, that's some very good advice. I think if we all make mistakes, and if we make a mistake, I would hope that somebody in a tactful way would help me resolve that mistake and we all learn from it. So I think that is some very, 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 very good advice. So that's what we had for you this morning, folks. I hope maybe you learned a little bit, and we're always open to any questions that might come up.
Well, thank you so much, Greg and Edgar. You guys hit on some really great points. I really like, especially this closing piece, talking about taking ownership. As I tell the students all the time, and even my own children, like that I'm raising, you'll get a lot more respect from people if you do just own it. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to run from it. Don't try to, blame somebody else. Just own it, and you'll get a lot more respect from that. And then, like you said, take this as an opportunity to learn. It's okay to make mistakes, just don't keep making the same mistakes over and over, because that's not learning. But if you own it and then work with your immediate supervisor on how to correct it and move on from that. And Edgar's story about having to have an uncomfortable conversation, just because you do screw up, not screw up is probably the wrong word, but you do make a mistake, it doesn't mean that your career's over. It's not a scarlet letter you have to wear on your chest forever and say like, okay, oh my gosh, I can't get it. No, it's part of learning. So having that uncomfortable conversation, but then growing from it, like Edgar said, this person came up and thanked him for his honesty, because then the self-growth and reflection can continue. That's really a good point. So thank you.
Megan, yeah, can I add one other thing to that? I'm sorry, but
Sure.
and again, it gets back to what Edgar said about having that open conversation with the associate and what you just said. And to the person receiving I would call it constructive feedback, how you receive that, in my opinion, is critically important. You need to be open to that feedback. And, sometimes people get a little defensive, but be open to that feedback, because that person is trying to help you. And so receive it in that manner. And then how you handle that situation, if you get really defensive and angry and, and not taking ownership, that comes off as a big negative. If you take the constructive feedback, in a positive way. I'm going to fix this problem. You know, I'm going to learn from this mistake, and I'm going to move on, take the high road. I'm going to tell you what, from a management standpoint, and Edgar, you can talk about that. That goes a long way for me, because somebody who's willing to learn, accept mistakes, fix the mistakes, and then accept that constructive feedback that we provide. That's important. I don't need somebody who's always fighting with me and battling with me. I need somebody who's a teammate and a partner and is willing to learn. And Edgar, I know you feel the same way. You deal with that each and every day.
Yeah, and you're going to deal with that your whole career. For everyone in the room, Greg is my direct boss, and Greg has to give me feedback. And, at every level, you're going to get feedback throughout your career. And if you're not, then that could be more of a concern. You want people in your career and in your workplace that have an investment in you and that want to see your success. So I think Greg's advice is very, very good. And for any of you who are looking to go out into the workforce, you have an option when you get feedback. You can get bitter or you can get better. And the way you handle that can have a big impact on your future.
I like it, Edgar. You can get bitter or you can get better.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, and thank you, students, for joining us. I'm going to take off or if you can unshare your screen, Greg, I'm going to put this image back up for students if they need to get their attendance counted.
Okay.
Okay. So students, if you need your attendance counted for Passport, you can scan the QR code. I also put the link in the chat pod, or maybe I didn't. Hold on a second. I don't think I did. Let me put the link in the chat pod for you if you guys need to, if you're on your phones and you need to click that for attendance. Other than that, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you, students, for being here with us. Have a wonderful, safe weekend. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.